story for the I don't know how many time, and I hope that you don't get bored with it. What I need to tell you mostly is that I am here and I am Muslim solely by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as I look back on my life, that's been rather lengthy, I know that Allah takes care of me. I didn't know how I was going to get here today, and it turns out that I have a neighbor that lives only 2 blocks or 3 blocks away from me, and I didn't know any Muslims that lived in the area that I moved to. So there is another grace from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I guess I should start by saying that when I became Muslim at the age of 14. And it was due to a number of factors. First of all, in that particular day and time, there was a lot of civil unrest in the country. African Americans couldn't speak out as much as they do now about civil injustices, but however, we were conscious of it. I lived in New York with my mother and my father and the rest of my family. I didn't have any siblings at that time. I went to high school, and there was a lot of prejudice and discrimination there. However, I came to know about Islam through a family member who became friends with someone who knew Muslims. They came to my house. This was after my mother and father separated. They came to my mother's house, and they were giving her dawah. In those days, you were a child and you did not go into the living room where your elders were talking. You stayed in a small room by yourself and you were very quiet. So I could hear them giving her dawah. Now up to that point, I had not wanted to go to church because of the fact that my mother and my father had separated, and I was ashamed and I didn't want to go to the church anymore. The family was very staunch Baptist group and very well known in the church. But I just didn't feel like I wanted to go there because I was embarrassed. So my mother said, well, you can be anything you want to. If you find a church that your girlfriends go to, you can do that. And I said, fine. And I began to go to different churches with my little girlfriends from school. But I never found anything satisfying. When I went to the Catholic church, it was very dark and dismal. And those statues made me kind of scared. I didn't like that, and I didn't understand Latin, so it didn't mean anything to me. Then another girl took me to a place where it was like a storefront church, and the people were all clapping their hands and jumping up and down and screaming and howling, and they scared me to death again. So I was in confusion as to where I was going to go. In the meantime, these Muslims came to my house and they gave my mother the dawah. Unfortunately, she never accepted it. But I heard it and I liked it. Because what they said was, I liked the part that they said that everyone in the world was the same. That they were all brothers. They understood that they were all brothers and sisters, and no matter where in the world they were all the same because they were Muslims, and so forth and so on. So I asked these people one day when I saw them on the street, would you please tell me where it is you go? I said, would you take me there? And they said, no, we're not going to take you there. And the reason why was because they knew that my mother didn't want me to go there. They said, your mother will not permit it. So I said, being the precocious child that I was, I said, well, and we lived in Brooklyn, New York at that time. So there was access to the subways. So I said, well, I can meet you on the subway station. I can follow you to where you go. You don't have to take me. And they said, well, okay, because these were grown adults. But they said, all right, but we are not taking you there. You can follow us if you like. And I made the time to meet them, and I did that. And when I went there, I think that was the beginning of my life. Though there were many bumps in the road and there were a lot of trials and tribulations, because I became Muslim and in spite of me becoming Muslim, but I am here today to tell you that I wouldn't have it any other way. None of it. But anyway, when I went to the masjid, the people treated me very, very nicely, and they gave me the dawah and all of that, and I came home happily to tell my mother. I kind of restrained that for a while. I didn't tell her right away. And then I finally got up the courage to tell her, and keeping in mind that she said I could be anything I wanted to be. And I told her that I had become Muslim. And she said, I didn't. She slapped my face very hard, and she said, I didn't tell you. I said, but you said I could be anything I wanted to be. And she said, but I didn't tell you you could be that. So, needless to say, there was war in the house from then on. From then on, between my mother, of course, when my father's family found out about it because they were staunch Baptists, I got the label of being a very bad girl. I was a heathen, and I was bound for hell. So that was one of their decrees, okay? The teachers didn't understand what was the matter with me because they were teaching falsehoods about Africa, Africans, talking about Muslims in ways that were derogatory, and I wasn't having any of it, and I was always in the principal's office or worse, getting into trouble all the time because of it. And so finally, I contrived my own release from school. Every time my mother went to work in the morning, I would double back and go home. So I was out of school for, I think a total of maybe 40 some odd days playing hooky. And they said, well, there's something wrong with her. Mrs. Green, you have to take her because we think that she has psychological problems. Well, I can tell you, yes, I did have psychological problems because the family was dysfunctional in many, many ways. In any case, and they made me a little dysfunctional too. I'm getting over it slowly, up to now. Anyway, I went through that nonsense, and of course being labeled a very bad child. I said, well, okay then, maybe you want to see how very bad I can be, because I can be much worse than what you think. Well, that didn't go over too well, and I lived the rest of my life. I didn't have a teenage life. I didn't. I had a life, but I didn't have a teenage life. It was full of trauma and rantings and ravings and all kinds of things like that. In any case, every once in a while I would gravitate back to the masjid. Speaking of that again, and I digressed a little, what happened was there were some people in the masjid that maybe I should not have initially tied to. Maybe they were a little more advanced in certain ways than I was, and I didn't understand. So I kind of drifted away from them. And then finally I came back to Islam, and here I am. So succinctly, I hope I didn't bore anybody because I tell the story all the time. And there's maybe on variation, I add something, I leave something out. Maybe it's because I'm getting bored with the story. But I will tell you this, that there is no other life but a Muslim life. No matter what you go through in your daily life, no matter what comes to you, it's the mercy of Allah that you are able to just get through it somehow. And you have to keep Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uppermost in your mind. When you are traveling, say your dhikr, subhanallah wa bihamdihi, say anything. Ask Allah for anything you need, because whenever I ask my Lord for what I need, and he gives it to me, mashallah, because today I'm here, I didn't think I would be here, and he found me a driver to bring me here. And I see everybody that I know, and those that I don't know, I love you anyway. So thank you very much for listening, as I said, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.